Mr. President, thank you very much, both for giving the address and for coming to London. Your place is cemented in history as one of the key figures in bringing to an end, peacefully, apartheid in South Africa. But 25 years on, I think everyone in this room has some sense of the enormous challenges facing your country, restoring the power and authority of the state after a lost decade, rooting out endemic corruption and turning around what ought to be one of the most powerful economies on the continent. You, by nature, are cautious, a practitioner, perhaps, of strategic patience. But my question is, how long have you got?
I guess not long.
6 minutes.
No, we have been making progress. And we've made tremendous progress, obviously, in the last 25 years. But in the last year and a few months, we've made tremendous progress in turning our country around, in stabilizing institutions that were weakened over the past few years, and some of which were almost destroyed. We've re-established those institutions, strengthened them. For instance, institutions such as the revenue collection institutions, the tax collection institution was weakened quite enormously. We've repositioned it, and it is now going to continue on the good path. The prosecuting authority was also weakened over the past few years, and a number of other institutions, criminal intelligence and what have you. So we're strengthening those institutions, and they are now becoming more and more confident and more poised to execute their role and their task as independent institutions that are meant to restore governance in our country. So that has taken time, and we are now poised to move forward. And on the economic front, we have faced enormous weaknesses, some of which emanate from our apartheid past. But we're making progress, particularly on the reform agenda that we have embarked on, where with a number of weaknesses, policy uncertainty, and inconsistency, we are addressing that. And I'm glad to see that we are doing that in tandem with what many other countries on the continent are also doing.
So next month, Moody's is going to deliver a verdict on whether South Africa will still maintain its investment grade on its debt. What can you tell us today, particularly regarding your plans for reforming Eskom, which is going to reassure Moody's and keep that investment grade?
Well, Eskom, as I was saying, is dogged by its huge debt. We're going to be making announcements of how we're going to deal with that debt in a few days. And we hope that Moody's will take note of what we are seeking to do. And we're coming up with a number of ideas, innovative ideas of how to deal with the debt in Eskom. But we also have to deal with the issues of the executive management in Eskom. We will be making announcements in that regard. Lots of new appointments? Yes. From outside? Lots of new appointments, indeed. We will be focusing on that. We're also going to strengthen the board of Eskom. But we're also going to be dealing with just the debt collection, because the debt collection in terms of collecting the tariffs that people pay has weakened over time, and we're going to come up with new strategies and programs to deal with that. And I think that Moody's and others will be very happy with the announcements that we are going to make, and the announcements will be much broader than that. We will also be dealing with our strategy more broadly on energy, how we are going to be dealing with the energy mix that we have, because as you know, there's a lot of pressure on countries that rely on coal-fired power stations. We're also going to deal with that and give a clearer picture of where we will be moving forward with other sources of energy.
And everybody in this room is excited to hear your plans for South Africa Airways.
Well, South African Airways is one of those state-owned enterprises that has relied on lots of bailouts. And we are on record as saying we're open to participation of the private sector with regards to some of our SOEs. That has now gone throughout the country and it's sunk in. So SAA, for instance, we could be open to a strategic equity partner, and in fact, as we speak now, we're talking to a few interested parties when it comes to SAA, for instance.
Mr. President, you were a witness to the Truth and Reconciliation hearings more than 20 years ago. Can we expect Chapter 2 when the Guptas are extradited to South Africa?
Well, we've been working on how those who are complicit in the widespread corruption can be brought to book. We are committed through our various agencies, our prosecutorial authorities, our crime intelligence authorities, to make sure that those who are complicit, and let me immediately say, by the way, that our country has been dogged with a lot of corruption right across the board, in the private sector as well as in the public sector. There have been enormous scandals in the private sector where those who are responsible still have to be brought to book as well.
You're not talking about a certain retailer, are you?
Well, that and many others. So that is a process that is underway. Now, I'm more confident than I've been in the past that our prosecuting agency, in putting together everything that they need to do, will definitely be going after those who are complicit in criminal activity, be they in the country or be they outside the country. They will follow them up.
And do you think obviously everyone is innocent until proven guilty, especially in a South African court, but the scale of corruption was epic in the last 10 years, wasn't it?
It was huge. It was much bigger than I think many people could ever have imagined. But the good thing is that we have stemmed that bleeding. We are now ready to open a new chapter, and that new chapter is going to be those who are responsible will be brought to book,
yes.
And we now chart a new course of clean governance, of making sure that we avoid these corrupt tendencies.
Now, because we're in this room amongst friends, Mr. President.
Are we all friends here?
And some very good-looking friends, too.
Of course, of course.
But as you know, and we've known each other for nearly 20 years, I'm a numbers man. If you had to put a number on the cost of state capture and the amount of money that was just stolen, would you say it was about 500 billion rand?
It could easily be even above that.
My goodness.
It could even be above that. A lot of money was siphoned out of the coffers of the state through corrupt means, and some of those were very sophisticated. And may I say that some of those included blue chip companies of great world reputations, and they participated and abetted and aided the siphoning of money. And that is the shocking part, that companies that operate in various capitals of the world found their way into coming to steal money and siphon money out of a developing country that we are as South Africa, and it runs way beyond, in my view, more than 500 billion. Some people have even suggested that it could even be R1 trillion.
My goodness. Mr. President, I'm conscious of time, and I could happily sit here all morning talking to you.
I know that. And I wish I could come to a moment one day when I would ask you questions.
Just one last question, because I mentioned your role more than 25 years ago. It was significant. And there is this second chapter, if you like, waiting to be written. And many people said, both privately and publicly, when you became president, that you were South Africa's last best hope. I mean, how does it feel to carry that burden?
It's a scary notion. But fortunately, I'm not alone in all this. I have a huge number of people who are like-minded, who want to see our country being restored to a country that promotes and has embraced the values that Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo and many other leaders stood for. So I'm aided and abetted by many, but it's not only in party circles, it's also in the private sector, it's also in the religious organizations. So there's an army of South Africans who want South Africa to do good, who want South Africa to go back to embracing and practicing those values that Nelson Mandela stood for. So in that regard, I stand on the shoulders of many South Africans as I work with others to lead our country down the good path.
I'm sure I speak for everybody in this room who wishes you the greatest success with the challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You want me to go? You sit down. Thank you, Lionel.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer all questions in Pretoria.